The rapid rise and dramatic downfall of property developer Duval Group left hundreds of investors and contractors reeling, debt totalling $268 million. Now, a new BusinessDesk podcast, The Fall of the House of Duval, is revealing fresh details about how the group unravelled. Maria Slade, property editor at BusinessDesk and host of the podcast, joins me at the desk. Maria, good morning.
Good morning.
Fascinating. Obviously, people are very interested in the story. When you first looked into Duval, what struck you most about the scale and the complexity of the group?
It wasn't either of those things, actually. I first started writing about them in 2021, and I wrote a column for my employer at the time, the National Business Review, basically using them as an example of a new breed of property developers, property investment companies that we'd seen spring up. And around that time, you'll remember, of course, we had a massive housing boom. And this group of companies was making the most of an exemption in the wholesale investing law, which basically means that you can offer these quite high-risk, unregulated investments to people that are deemed to be eligible investors. So wholesale investments are usually given to people who are very wealthy. You know, they know what they're doing, they can stand to take the risk. But this sort of new sector was marketing them to ordinary mums and dads. And the Financial Markets Authority was getting pretty worried about it. You know, there were ads popping up on Facebook and newspapers and all this kind of thing, you know, offering 10, 12% returns, which even then, well, now it's pretty extraordinary, but even then, when interest rates were so low, that was just incredible. And of course, people were attracted to that because they were getting nothing in the bank for their money. And so I just used Duval as an example, and they didn't like it. And there was legal trouble then. And since then, myself and other people in the business media have just kept on following them because they were pretty loud and proud, even though they were really just a townhouse and apartment developer based in South Auckland and West Auckland. You know, nothing really out of the ordinary. But these people were just so out there self-promoting. They made a reality TV series about themselves. They were offering property masterclasses. You know, they were just, you know, big characters. So that was part of the attraction as well. That, you know, what were they doing?
And the collapse that we all know the story now, obviously. You obviously got there from the beginning. But the statutory management of more than 70 entities, what does that tell us about how serious the situation was?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. A lot of people wouldn't even know what statutory management is because it's a rarely used tool. It's very only in extreme circumstances. And the last time we saw it used of any note was the South Canterbury Finance Group about 15 years ago. People may remember that. So really it's used, the government comes in and takes over a business because they're worried about, a lot of people have been affected, it's very complex, crimes may have been committed. And so the Commerce Minister at the time, Andrew Bailey, he saw fit to appoint statutory managers to Duval. And we knew there'd been problems. We'd been writing a lot about, you know, subbies weren't being paid, building sites were sort of, you know, people were walking off the job, that kind of thing. So we kind of knew something was going to happen, but we didn't know it was going to be like this. And then we saw this dramatic raid on their house and business in August 2024. And since then, the statutory management process has been working its way through. And parallel to that, the Financial Markets Authority has been investigating the group. And no charges have been laid. It is, you know, we must point that out. So we're still waiting, really, to see the full fallout of this.
What kinds of investors, I mean, you talked about sort of regular Kiwis, what kinds of investors do you think were lured, or I don't know if that's the right word, were attracted to this?
Really ordinary people, farmers who'd sold a bit of land, teachers who had retirement savings. One of the investors that we interview in the podcast was an administrator. She'd just gone through a divorce and had some money and was persuaded that this, you know, this property company producing great returns, this would be a great place to park her money, but she's lost it all. And in fact, she had even agreed to buy 2 townhouses off the plans from Duval, one for herself and one for her ageing parents. So, you know, she was sort of well in there, and the results have been catastrophic on her life. So this sort of investment where your money wasn't very liquid, you couldn't get it out easily, it was quite risky, it was inappropriate for someone like her, and yet she had, you know, had it marketed to her.
Maria, where to from here? Does anyone get their money, you know, potentially get their money back?
Well, PwC, who are the statutory managers, they're still working on it. Their last report said that it was unlikely that any of the investors would get their money back, apart from one small group. So there's about 64 million owed to investors, maybe 4 or 5 million maybe returned. The rest is probably lost. And as you say in your intro, there's 268 million owed overall, and that's to lenders, the taxman, subbies. There's about 9 odd million owed to your tradies, your electricians, that sort of thing. And it's not looking like a huge amount of that will be recovered.
It's very sad news indeed. We look forward to the podcast, though.
Thank you.
Maria. Thank you, Maria Slade, property editor and Business Desk host of the podcast. The Fall of the House of Duval is out now on iHeart app, on the iHeart app, I should say, or wherever you like to get your podcasts. It's available from this morning. First episode dropped this morning, didn't it?
Or 2, actually.
2 episodes this morning.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'll be busy this afternoon. Thanks, Maria.